Good morning, our dear students. Please, I would want to let us have this video uh, on the course Coastal Ecosystem, MSM 853. So the first lecture on this video, we want to talk about an overview on the coastal ecosystem. An overview of the coastal ecosystem. Uh, Sometimes we hear coastal ecosystem, sometimes we hear coastal zone or coastline, or all these nomenclature point to a particular thing. But then there might not be a very single definition for coastal zone. In fact, some authors say that a coastal zone is that part of the land most affected by its proximity and its closeness to the sea, and also conversely that part of the ocean most affected by its proximity to land. So either way, so you can say that part of the land that is very close to the sea and thereby it's been impacted by the sea. You can say that part of the sea, as it were, that is very close to land and then most affected by activities on land. So, but the coastal zone has been defined to include the intertidal and the subtidal area on and above the continental shelf. Okay, so intertidal in the case in between tides, the highest tidal mark and then the lowest tidal mark, then together with the subtidal one, that is the one that are submerged always. Okay, now but then beyond, even beyond the intertidal zone, you have, I mean, landwards anyway, you have the splash zone. The splash zone, that is where maybe water gets splashed when wave breaks. So now, judging from the definition by Hinrichsen 1998, the splash zone is also a coastal zone because it's been impacted by the activity of the sea. Okay, so when we define the coastal zone as the intertidal, the subtidal, as well as the land, okay, including all the areas that are routinely inundated by salt water in one way or another, maybe through the sea wind, sea breeze, maybe through splashing of waves and so on. So, but all we need to know, or all we are very sure of, that this zone has has large, remarkable biological productivity, and then is also accessible. Now, it's accessible because it's not deep, in the deep sea, so we can easily access it. Either coming from land, you can easily, and it's not also deep. Okay. Of course, should know that at this point we are talking about a depth that shouldn't exceed 200 meters. All right. Now, they are a major carbon sink and oxygen source because of high productivity of phytoplankton. Now, apart from the microphytes, that the phytoplankton, also the macrophytes, the seagrass, the larger macrophytes, are also found at this coastal zone. And when we say carbon sink, it means that they collect a lot of carbon from the atmosphere. Of course, they use the carbon dioxide, in the process of photosynthesis. So they remove the carbon from the atmosphere, and of course we know that carbon, the oxides of carbon, whether carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, they are they are warm gases. They are greenhouse gases. Okay, so they are also source. I mean, this one is also source of oxygen production, because in the process of removing carbon, they use that carbon that is actually a hazard, that is actually toxic to us. They use it to give us something that is very beneficial to us, that is oxygen. Okay. Now, what you also have to know is that at this point, at the coastal zone, people congregate, people gravitate, because a lot of things that happen at the coastal zone, leisures, recreational activities, tourism. In fact, any country or any state that is located by the coast is usually expensive, because then all the good natural things that come from the sea, they enjoy it. So these areas are areas of trade, areas of leisure, areas of recreational activities, tourism. So people gravitate, people seem to concentrate in these areas. Now, because people get or get concentrated in these areas because of higher population density in this area, definitely they be this area be impacted by human. So you want to look at, not exhaustively anyway, but you need to go and read more, the human induced impact on coastal ecosystem. Now, we said earlier that they have high population density. This high population density will actually induce some pressures. Okay. Now, in 1999, it was recorded that over 2.2 billion people. Okay, remember at this point, the world is not up to 6 billion. So, 2.2 billion people, about 39% of the world's population, lived within 100 kilometers of the coast. Okay, and then by an increase from 2 billion that was recorded in 1990. So in 5 years, you have zero point 0.2 billion. That's more than 200 million. That is actually has been added to the coastal population. Presently, about 40% of the world population live within 100 kilometers of the coast. So we are talking about 3.1 billion, out of approximately 6 billion. So, or 7 billion. So we have 40% of the world population living in the coastal area. So, and when they congregate like that, they will come actually with this consequent uh, pressure as a result of this high population density. All right. Now, the coastal area account for only 20% of all land area. So, in as much as it has low percentage of land, it is having higher percentage of human. So, what does that translate to? It means a high population density. A high population density, because by the time the land mass is reducing and the number of individuals are increasing, you are going to have a high population density. Now, another fact that about 19% of all land within 100 kilometers of coast, excluding the Antarctica and water body, are classified as altered. Now, what it means that they have been, the original, the pristine state of that environment had been altered, meaning that they are in agriculture or urban uses. So it's either they are used for agriculture, of course, proximity to water and so on, or they are used for developmental activities. 10% are semi-altered, involving a mosaic of natural and altered vegetation. So 19% purely altered, purely changed from their pristine state, and 10% semi-altered. Now, why all this? Because of this coastal area attract high population density, and with this high population density come a lot of pressures. Now, land modification of the coastal ecosystem. All human beings must actually alter their environment, maybe in a way of development, urbanization, or trying to modify the ecosystem. So they modify it in many ways. So this alteration to coastal environment may take many forms. Now it can take the form of creation or stabilization of inlets. You can create channels, inlets, maybe for navigation, maybe for transportation, and so on, or maybe for channeling of of flood water and all the rest. It can also be in form of beach nourishment, okay, where they take land, they take sand from deep sea and then deposit at 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 the beach. It can also be by what we call sediment bypassing. It's the same thing. Sometimes you see this big company like Julius Berger, putting a very big pipe, okay, bypassing sediment, as it were, from a particular location and then depositing in a particular location. This is exactly what happened at the coal Atlantic City. I remember in late, even up to late 2000, like 2008, 2009, and thereabout. These areas were purely water, okay? But all of a sudden, you start seeing sediment bypassing from the Atlantic, from the Gulf of Guinea, and then the whole place has turned to land, terrestrial. You also have creation of dunes for property protection, through beach scraping, through dredging of waterways, for shipping and commerce. So you also have introduction of hard structures such as jetties, growing seawalls, moors to avoid erosion. If you get to where we have former bar beach, or if you can tread through the NPA or through oceanography or through Harbor Point in VI, you will see two moles, two hard structures, okay, on one side and on both sides of the Atlantic, of that part of the Atlantic. One is called the East Mole, the other one is called the West Mole. Now, these moles were created by our colonial masters. In fact, they were just rocks that were brought from Abeokuta or thereabout, and then placed there just to prevent or excessive siltation. Because that pathway leads to the Lagos Harbor, and Lagos Harbor is the only entrance, from the Lagos Lagoon to the Atlantic. So if vessels are passing, that's the only inlet, that's the only channel through which they can access the Apapa Wharf or the Tinkan Wharf. So to avoid excessive citation, some hard structures are being placed to prevent that. That's where we have the moves. But in any way you look at it, that is a form of modification of the coastal ecosystem. Now you also have land reclamation where for example, Lagos felt that we don't have enough land. Lagos is having high population density. yet the most part of our land is water. So what do we do? Let us try to reclaim the land. Now, see, I don't know why it's being called land reclamation, because the land wasn't there from the onset. So why are you reclaiming something that was not there? Well, they call it land because they want to build structures, and then they call it land reclamation. You can see exactly what happened at the Atlantic City, where the Atlantic Ocean was filled, you know, with sediment through the process of sediment bypassing, and then turned to land, and then structures being erected. A lot of impact is going to come up, but I hope they did some environmental impact assessment. Anyway, so it's called land reclamation. That's why I put it in quote, because land is not actually being reclaimed. It has been water all along. But it's not that they wanted to add to the land you had before. You are now taking over the sea and turning it to land. That doesn't make it land reclamation. Land reclamation can mean maybe it was land before, maybe they then turn back to water and then they want to reclaim. Anyway, these are just matter of semantics. Now, these modifications change coastal features, and they have far-reaching effects on our coastal processes and ecosystem. All right. Now, we also have overexploitation. Overexploitation uh, is when you exploit, in excess. Now, but I want us to know that exploitation is good. What is bad is overexploitation. Exploitation is just a matter of getting something good out of something. Maybe something that was there, lying fallow, but you just said to make good use of it. That is to exploit. Okay. Explore is also very, very good. Explore means to delve into new areas, to make researches and discover new things. You are exploring. So to explore and to exploit are very good. In fact, in the oil and gas industry, we talk about oil exploration and we talk about oil exploitation. Now, what is oil exploration? That is when you have the 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 the, the upstream sector, where you go and search for oil. You explore, you do seismic uh, exploration, trying to find out where oil is located. That is exploring. Now, when you finally discover it, what do you do next? You now exploit it. Now, remember, these are crude, and when we say crude, when something is crude, that is cannot be used at its face value. It needs to be refined, it needs to be put in a shape, in a condition that is beneficial to mankind. So that is what we mean by exploitation. Because if you don't use it, they don't be there and they be useless, as it were. So when you explore, you discover. Then when you exploit, you are now going to turn it to some form of finished product that is useful. So they are very good. But what is bad is over exploitation. And most time we talk of over exploitation in renewable resources. Okay, there are also over exploitation in non-renewable, but we talk of over exploitation more in renewable resources, and that is why the opposite of it is actually conservation. Okay, so overexploitation of effect on the coastal is that it can have two. Let's just pick one thing, like fishes or living resources. Just as I said, living resources are renewable resources. So the living resources in the ocean, for example, you are over exploiting. There are two different types of effect. There's a direct effect and there's an indirect effect. Now, in the direct effect, what happens is that the particular organism is depleted. Maybe they are spawning biomass. Their spawning biomass are those ones that are mature enough to now reproduce. Now you go and you deplete them. Now what it means is that there might not be enough spawning biomass to replenish that population. So that's a problem. It can also be in a way of eroding the juvenile and the young ones. Okay, where you have a very uh, thin size or thin, very small mesh size of fishes, and then you go and then you sweep everything. Now, that's supposed to be the size that we allow the juvenile, the small one, to escape. But you made the mesh size to be very small so that everything will be swept. Even the fingerlings will not be swept. Now, as you are doing that, you are removing the juvenile, you are eroding the juvenile, and no population that will now grow to replenish and now get to the spawning biomass that will now reproduce to replenish the population. So that's bad. There also be a general biodiversity loss. For example, you sweep everything, you got both the bikers and then the useful ones, and then you are just depleting the biome. There can also be some form of physical disturbances. You always, throwing your net. You always, trying to exploit maybe the noise disturbance, maybe the physical disturbance of the organism. That can lead to defaunization. That can lead to the organisms relocating and all that, or even dying. So all these ones are direct. Now, but in the indirect one, that's what they call ghost fishing. Now, what is ghost fishing? Does it mean that the ghosts go about fishing? No, but let's see it this way, and that will help our understanding. Ghost fishing. Now, when fishermen go and then they, because they were exploiting, sometimes their net will just cut off and then be lost in the sea, or maybe get hooked somewhere. Now, and then they left. They couldn't see it, and so they left. They abandoned it, and then they left. Now, that net keep catching fishes, because a net is just like an obstruction that will not allow the movement of the fishes. So when they get there, they got hooked, and it's done in such a way that when they got hooked, sometimes it gets to the upper column, the what something that covers the gills, has some opening, so it gets hooked on the upper column, and then that's all. They just stay there and they will die. Now, meanwhile, you are no longer there, but your net that you abandoned is busy catching fishes. So that is called ghost fishing, because those fishes nobody will come back to pick them, so they will stay there, they will die there, and they will get decayed there, polluting even the environment. So that is called ghost fishing. There's also what we call trophic cascading. Trophic cascading. Now, what is trophic cascading? Now, in the trophic, in the food chain or food web, there are levels. Okay, those levels are called the trophic level. Now, if a particular level is eroded or removed, it will affect the one before it. It will also affect the one above it. Now, let's just give this small example. Now, you have the phytoplankton. Let's use the marine ecosystem as the trophic ecosystem. You have the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton are being eaten by the zooplankton. The zooplankton have been eaten by the anchovies, that the small fishes, anchovies. The anchovies have been eaten by the larger fish. Now, these are step by step. Okay. Now, supposing you go about and you erode or you destroy totally or you diminish drastically the number of anchovies. Now, what happens is this. What happens is that there will not be an anchovy that will eat the zooplankton. Okay, and there will not be anchovy that the larger fishes will eat. Now, that will cause an imbalance in that ecosystem. So what will happen is that because there are no anchovies to eat the zooplankton will multiply excessively. They will multiply excessively to the extent that they will start having cannibalization. They will start eating themselves. No, because they will just multiply excessively, their number, their size, and all the rest. And because they are multiplying excessively, they will be putting pressure on the phytoplankton, because the phytoplankton is like their own food. So they will put pressure and they will almost like remove all the phytoplankton, and that will have another effect on the rate of photosynthesis. And but let's now also go to people that the organism that eat the anchovies, no, sorry, that eat that eat the anchovies. Now that's the ladderfish. So because you have removed the anchovies, there will no longer be anchovies for the ladder fishes to eat. So the ladder fishes will starve and they will die. Now, meanwhile, the ladder fishes are starving and dying because there's no anchovies for them to eat. Now, the zooplankton that the anchovies eat are now multiplied excessively because there are no anchovies to eat them. And then because they are multiplying excessively, they will put pressure on the one that they eat, that the phytoplankton, and almost remove all of them. And because they remove almost all the phytoplankton, there are no avenue for photosynthesis. So you have created imbalance, a very massive imbalance. Why? Because you have destroyed or reduced radically a trophic level. That is what is called trophic cascading. All right, so this is where we are going to end the lecture. But you have to check out for a term paper. I will let you know when the term paper is on. That term paper is going to be on the impact on developmental activities on the coastal ecosystem, a case study of the Eco Atlantic project. That will be given to you in due time. So, thank you so much for listening, and then we get to the next lecture